Hey everyone, welcome back to the Sync podcast. This is the space where we bring together a community of inclusive-minded organizations and people who are committed to driving real, lasting impact. Because inclusion isn't just a concept, it's a commitment to ensuring no one is left behind. Each episode, we sit down with changemakers who are reshaping systems and building equity in their industries. And today's guest is doing just that in the employee benefits space. I'm so excited to welcome Gianna Ricciardi, the co-founder of Vita Assure, now part of Jones DesLauriers. It's a brokerage firm focused on making employee benefits more accessible and sustainable for small and medium-sized businesses across Quebec and Ontario. With a mission to help organizations take better care of their people, Gianna is challenging the status quo of traditional benefits models by combining smart strategy with a people-first mindset. Through her work, she's helping businesses not only offer more equitable coverage, but build cultures where employees feel truly supported. Welcome, Gianna. Gianna, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
It's great to have you. I'm sure a lot of people don't think of inclusion and benefits in the same breath. But I'd like us to start by talking a little bit about your journey, because as I started to research a little bit more about the insurance industry, I was surprised to discover that only 18% of insurance advisors are women. And so for you to found a brokerage firm in this industry is like you're in a select few, you're in a hallowed ground. So talk to us a little bit about what brought you to founding Vita Assure and what sort of has drawn you to this industry.
Yeah, wow. I didn't know of that particular statistic, but definitely, the insurance industry has been male dominated. How did I get here? Good question. I've been in this benefit space for over 20 years now. I started, working for an insurance company. I was responsible for developing the brokerage channel. That was definitely very male dominated, older men. When I started in the business, I was a baby still. I was like 21 years old, fresh out of school. So, for sure it was interesting. And then as my career evolved, I ended up in the consulting space. And that was actually, there was a cultural, I don't want to say shock, but there was definitely a difference between the two spaces because there
Right.
was much more women in the consulting side than in the brokerage side, right? So that was interesting to see. But I think for me, as I evolved in my career, the first thing that I guess the main reason I decided to go on my own and start Vita Assure is because I felt that the industry had become a bit stale. It was a bit lacking empathy, and it just felt like I was just saying the same thing over and over and over. That was the same recommendations. It was the same plot. And I wanted to bring it back to the basics. So for me, what is insurance all about? What are benefits all about? It's about people, right? So I'm a person working with HR professionals, finance professionals, payroll professionals, and they're making decisions that affect all of their employees, and not only the employees, but their family members. It's at the end of the day, that's what we're doing, right? So, um, you know, how did I become an entrepreneur as a woman? I don't know. I never really thought of it that way, but I think I will say that I've always had strong female. My
Role
first
models or
director was female. Even when I moved to the consulting space, my director was female. It's interesting how in a male dominated industry, I ended up always with female leaders, but it happened that way. And I think that was maybe one of the things that led, to have a lot of support in my role and in my evolution. But one thing I think I do have to say, I can't take credit away where it's due, is that my mother, I think, played a large role. And they always say it starts with the home, right? And so she never treated me and my brother differently.
Right.
So she was tough, but she was tough on us equally. So it wasn't because, I'm the girl that I had to wash the dishes, or, that I had the same curfew as he did. So it might seem trivial, but I think these things shape our thinking. And so I always grew up thinking, I'm the same as him. We're the same, right? And so that, coupled with having, women that have achieved great things in their career as my leaders, it just led me to just, I have an idea, I have something worth doing, I can do it. It doesn't matter that most of the brokers are men, and it doesn't matter that, whatever those limits are. To me, I didn't see it. So I think not seeing it helped me have the confidence
Right.
to kind of move forward. So that's it. So here I am today. We created Vita Assure, again, always with that human aspect in mind. If you go on our website, you won't see any lighthouses, you won't see any umbrellas, you won't see any compasses. All of our pictures, I mean, those are great symbols. They mean that, as brokers, as advisors, we're here to guide our clients, but that's not what we're about. We're about people. So you'll see people, and all kinds of people, not people in stuffy suits, you know, people that represent everybody in the workforce, no matter what type of job you're doing, seniority level. We're here to help people, right?
So many things you just said resonated with me, and it really ties into what I've always believed about the value of the work we do. And when I was in the corporate world, the value of when you see it, you can be it. And so you saw women in these roles of decision making and impact, and it allowed you to see yourself taking a leadership role in your industry. The other takeaway for me, and this is something my daughters have said to me repeatedly. So hearing you say this about your mother, because it's very much what I got from my mom. My mom set no boundaries for us. We never thought that there was anything we couldn't do. And one of the things I always wanted to do for my daughters, give them a sense that, any limitations that you set for yourself. There's otherwise you have no limitations. Go out there, have the courage to fail, have the courage to go out there and try, and forget the judgment, forget the haters, forget all of that stuff. Just have the courage to go out there. We've got your back. We've got you. And, the sense that you had that, how empowering it was for you to not put those limitations on yourself that maybe socially would have been sort of put on you. That's a gift your mother gave you in a world, let's face it, that, that was a bit bucking the trend. The third thing that I hear when I talk to female entrepreneurs is about creating the world you want to see.
Yes.
And a lot of us start these businesses because we want, rather than sit there railing and fighting against the rails in a world that's not quite what we think it could be, the potential it could be, we go and actually we create that landscape ourselves, and we create that space. And that's what I think you've done, because you're right. The typical image that we see when we think about insurance are the compasses, are the sort of that long road ahead kind of imagery that we see. And the fact that you brought that human essence to the work that you do is probably why you've been so successful, and why I was drawn to you when you and I met. So yeah, I think those are takeaways for our audience. I think there's three things you've already learned from Gianna in the first question. So let's like sort of shift focus, because we're in a world that's changed dramatically. When I started in HR 30 years ago, insurance and the benefits offerings were pretty consistent across employers. They were pretty much your dental, your health, maybe a few paramedical services, et cetera. And now we're seeing an evolution where we're starting to talk about, mental health support through benefits services. We're talking about gender affirming care, the broadening the definition of what family planning is, and women's health is playing a larger role in what benefits employers are providing in terms of benefits for their employees. And so what have you seen in terms of the evolution of benefits and how it sort of ties to inclusion?
Yeah, definitely. There's been the workplace has dramatically changed, right?
Yes.
So, whereas, in the past, and I'm going way back, the typical workforce, there was only, one breadwinner. The spouse would stay at home to care for the children. So there was a specific set of needs there. But now, we're all over the map, right? There's so many different types of families. There's so many different ages in the workforce, different generations. So the insurance companies have had no choice, obviously, to adapt and evolve. And there's
Right.
been a lot of movement. You mentioned gender affirmations. A lot of plans now can include, a certain amount of coverage. Mental health is huge. So in that respect, I think one of the things that providers have tried to do is make virtual services available because they make that service more accessible to different types of people. And then also expand it on the list of professionals, because before you had to see a psychologist, and then, or maybe a social worker. Now you can psychotherapists, psychoeducators, counselors, Christian
Mm-hmm.
counselors, marriage all kinds of different types of professionals, just all in the hopes of providing better access because it's such a need, right? But for me, I think it's not enough that the insurance companies have all these options. It's really important that employers sit with their brokers or their advisors and discuss how to bring all of this together and how to structure the benefit design so that it meets the unique needs of their workplace and how they're going to wrap that all up. Because even though a lot of those options are available, we don't necessarily see that trickling into the plans.
I hear you. Well, it's funny you should say that because I was talking with one of our clients a few months ago, and we were shocked to discover also the low utilization. Like they had what looked like an incredible offering for their employees, but there was a low utilization of some of these services. And it suggests also that, have you as an employer taken the time to understand truly what your employees are looking for from you? And how do you make your employees aware of what those services are and how they can access those services? And also removing the stigma around some of these services, because some of these things are, it's less that you're providing them to employees and the need is definitely there, but there's still, we live in a society that has certain stigmas around accessing some of these services, and the trust between an employer and an employee about what am I revealing to my employer if I click I need these services. So what have you seen? Have you seen those? Have you had those conversations with some of your clients?
Absolutely. That's like a huge point because a big part of designing inclusive plans is education, communication, and language, right? So I separated that in three, but education, keep in mind, different people absorb information differently and have different levels of understanding and knowledge of what benefits are. So education is a key important, helping employees understand, what are the benefits and which situations can you utilize this? How do you go about utilizing it? That's really key. The other thing when I say communication, so again, we said different people learn differently. So you can have electronic means of communication, you can
Right.
have video, you can have case studies, you can have text, you can have images. And it's for me, one of the key things is removing jargon.
Yes.
This is really, really, really key to getting messages through to employees. And so that also brings me to language. Jargon is one thing, but words matter. Okay. So, we used to say things like, oh, you need infertility, your infertility treatment. What message does that send to your employee? Like you feel bad already, like you don't want to access the care, right? Then they changed it to fertility, which was slightly better. But now it's family planning, right? Family
Exactly.
planning addresses a much wider array of employees. Could that be adoption? Could that be fertility treatment? There's different ways to start a family. So words matter, even in your communication, using they instead of she, he, like these are things that someone might say, oh, it's such a small detail, but it does make a message in getting things through.
Yeah, I completely agree. And when you talked about language, it actually brings to mind two conversations I had in my days as a VP of HR. So one was, you talk about language. Sometimes we assume, and we live in Canada in a multicultural society. And we have people who hail from all over the world where, English or French is their third, fourth language, second, third, fourth language. And so assuming that what something means to us for which these are our first language, what it means to someone who's an immigrant may be a completely different and a misunderstanding or a misinterpretation of what that offering is. It also, if we look culturally, there can be certain stigmas associated with accessing those services. I can tell you, I come from the Caribbean. I come from Jamaica. The concept of mental health in Jamaica, no one wants to hear about it. It's anathema. Talking about sexual orientation in Jamaica, again, also something that culturally they're still evolving a lot in this space. And so to assume that what it means to us in Canada is the same thing to someone coming from one of these countries is a fallacy. The second thing is, I used to encourage, we encourage at Synclusiv a lot of our clients to make sure that you're providing providers that your employees can identify with. So if you're an Indigenous person, having a counselor who is Indigenous is far more powerful, and they're far better able to connect with that provider than they are if they are provided with the typical North American or a Canadian, a white Canadian therapist. And so I think this is another message around inclusion is, if you really want to lower your benefits costs and you want to ensure that people are not having relapses, make sure that you're providing the right support systems and services for your employees. So I think this is such an important message. So listen, I'm gonna talk about the elephant in the room. We've got a lot going on south of the border. A
Yes.
lot, a lot, a lot. And so the question I have for you is, where are we seeing sort of positive influences, in the industry that may be coming from everything that's going on? But where are there concerns that we may be regressing or lagging in the services that we are offering our employees, or you in your industry are offering your clients?
That's an interesting question. I think one of the benefits of what's happening, I don't know if we could call it that, but I will, is that I think Canadians are not more happy to be Canadian, but
Yes.
more proud, I guess,
Yeah.
more proud, right? So we're identifying more with our culture, with
Yes.
what Canada stands for. And I think that it will maybe trickle into benefits plans or corporate decisions that reinforce our Canadian identity. So
Right.
hopefully, instead of taking things away and saying, oh, they did it, we can take it away, I think hopefully it will have the opposite impact of saying, no, this is what we stand for.
Right. Almost a reaffirmation of what it means to be Canadian and what benefits mean in Canada versus what may be going on elsewhere in the world. And it's funny because what you were saying triggered a thought. I was speaking at a benefits conference last fall before, you know, I would say arguably we knew what was coming down the pipe. And one of the things that was really encouraging when we saw the reversal of Roe v. Wade, I think we as women long held the belief that, abortion rights was going to be something that was sort of set in stone, and we didn't think that we would ever have that threatened and actually reversed in the United States, not here in Canada. But what was really encouraging to see in the United States was the way employers stepped up and through their benefits providers to be able to make sure that despite maybe decisions that had been made legislatively or legally, that they were providing resources and services that supported women in their workplaces. Did you notice that or have
Yes.
conversations about that? Yeah.
Absolutely. And in high school, my physics teacher used to say action, reaction, right? That's physics. Something
So
happens,
true.
something else happens. So when things like this that are so dramatic and so unexpected happen, you have to take position. And so it's time for employers, no matter where they are in the world, to take position on what type of workplace they want
Hmm.
to have and what they stand for.
I love that. And it's talking about, living your values as an employer and making sure that all aspects of your organization reflect those values. And this was a real, to me, this was a watershed sort of test moment. And a lot of employers stepped up to the plate. So I was really encouraged to see the power that employers can play in this space. I don't think they really ever explored this before. Like I've never seen this in the benefit space where employers really exercise that power in response to something that happened on a policy level. So let's shift gears here. You work largely with small to medium companies in Quebec and Ontario. And one of the things that Vita Assure, I think you have this niche, is that this space is probably evolving more than large organizations in the benefit space have evolved, I would say. So when I first entered the not-for-profit space, no not-for-profits were offering benefits to employees. That was a feature of large employers, and it wasn't something that small to medium businesses and not-for-profits were offering. And so talk to me a little bit. Are you seeing a shift happening, and why do you think that is?
Yeah, I think, with just the economy, globalization, technology, everything that's going on, more and more small businesses are competing for the same talent. They're competing
Yeah,
for the same
right.
clients. I mean, listen, I started my own business. It's not easy. I really respect all of my clients that are in this space. But you're fighting for the same talent. So you have to step up to the plate. And on the flip side, I think that advances in technology and automation have also allowed providers to better service that space.
Yes.
So, because of some efficiencies that have been generated in the way we administer plans or pay claims and things like that, they had smaller employers do have access to a lot of the same things that larger employers have. And so I'm always out there saying, don't assume. Like sometimes I meet, smaller employers and they're like, oh, I can't get benefits because I only have, 10 employees, or I can't do this, or don't say I can't. Talk to a professional, talk to an advisor, talk to me,
There
and we'll
you
figure it
go.
out, right? So yes, it's I think it's becoming more and more popular, more common in that market. And a lot of smaller employers have the advantage of being very close to their employees, right?
Yes.
Because they're smaller teams. And so hopefully they can have a better understanding of what brings value, and we can inject some of that flexibility or the benefits that meet those needs.
So it's funny, you should say that because you and I had a little chat about, chicken and the egg. Like, I wonder, was it the sort of the influx of small to medium and not-for-profits in this space that influenced a need to be far more efficient, provide much more flexibility, to be more adaptable to that growing market? Or was it that the evolution of technology, et cetera, enabled small to medium businesses to get in? Like, sort of what sort of, which way do you think it happened, or did it happen sort of simultaneously?
It's hard to say. It's one of those questions that I think we'll never really have an answer to, but I think if I had to give an answer, it would be a mix of both, right? So they both push and pulled each other, right?
Right.
They both influence the space.
Yeah, that's it. I absolutely agree that it's sort of a need
It was
was
there. The need was
there,
there.
and then you sort of stepped up to the need. But it actually triggers also, again, talking about inclusion. One of the value propositions that I've always said to people about making sure you're not leaving anyone behind, when you think of it solely from a business and profitability perspective, just opening your mind up to this other market and the needs of small to medium employers, small to medium businesses and not-for-profits, which have grown exponentially in the last 20 years, has opened up the industry to new markets, and also allowed a Vita Assure to exist and allowed a Vita Assure to grow and, become acquired as well. So, I mean, it's just, to me, a perfect example of the value of opening your mind to the possibilities of other markets and people from different perspectives and experiences, etc. So, so, not to toot the horn of inclusion, but it's just really, you're a perfect sort of business case or case study of the value of that. So another shift that I'd like us to talk about, because we just had an election in Ontario, and the Conservatives have a third mandate in Ontario. And the question really is, one of the things of the platforms that they've had is really around privatization of our public health care and introducing private medical services to the Canadian landscape. And so, talk to me a little bit about how you see that impacting the benefits programs and benefits that employers will be providing. Would they be making these accessible to them? Does it create sort of two tiers of society, those who have access to these and those who don't? So,
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I mean, since the beginning of time, benefits, like employer-sponsored benefits, have always been there to supplement the
right.
public healthcare system, right? So even if you look at your policy, if you pull it out on the booklet, it doesn't say healthcare, it says extended healthcare, right? People
So
always ask me,
true.
why does it say extended healthcare? It's because it's just topping up, it's filling the gaps of what the public healthcare system is not offering. And I think that we're a long road ahead, like a long ways ahead, like before we becoming a dual, like
Hmm.
private and public system. For now, we're still a public healthcare system, and group insurance providers are not even allowed to reimburse doctors' fees. So if doctors decide to opt out of the public system, they're not allowed. So, but there's different ways that employers are saying, well, there's a need, there's gaps. How can we go further? One of the big pushes, I guess, was when virtual healthcare became popular, right? So
Yes.
telemedicine apps. So the ability to be able to speak with a doctor, consult a nurse practitioner, get, a lot of the same services that we would normally get through a walk-in clinic. That's a form of privatization, if you think about it, right? It's the employer that's offering this service. Healthcare spending accounts. So before we talked about things that we can do to our plan to make them more inclusive. I didn't mention that, but that's actually a huge way to inject flexibility. And it also addresses this whole privatization thing in the sense that you can submit doctor's fees to a health spending account.
Right.
So
Right.
it's an interesting tool, that the health spending account. For those that don't know what it is, it's an allowance. I guess it's an allowance that the employer can offer, and it's completely flexible. Let's say you're offering $1,000. Imagine a bank account that has $1,000 in it, but that could only be spent on medical expenses. But what's a medical expense? Anything that CRA considers to be a medical expense, that's huge, right? So it's really like it's the most inclusive you could be. Like you could claim
Right.
anything, right? But going back to the privatization, yeah, it's an interesting, I think employers will continue if it adds values to employees. And of
Yeah.
course, the offering benefits is to retain and motivate talent, right? So if it adds value, I think employers will find ways to offer to help them get access to care in the private sector. But like I said, in the flip side of that, we have still the federal government that just launched a federal dental plan, right? So we're having like these opposite these
Exactly. Like
opposite
these
things.
dueling,
Yeah, it's a duel, exactly,
yeah.
right? Like who's gonna win, public versus private, right? So who knows?
It's funny. I was thinking as you were talking that, as these sort of debates are happening, one of the real values of, one of the positives to come out of the pandemic was I think people became a lot more open generationally to virtual medicine, to picking up the phone, or even doctors who are, you know, generationally, maybe Gen X or boomers. I think they also became much more comfortable with picking up the phone and saying, let's have a teleconference about, a health issue. I talked to my doctor on the phone way more since the pandemic than I did before the pandemic. It used to be find a slot in your calendar and rush off to the office to get like 5, 10 minutes with them to tell you something that they very easily could have told you on the phone and got you to the next stage of your care versus that, the inefficiencies of face-to-face medicine where it's not needed. So again, another example of the evolution of the benefits space, to adapt to a changing, you know, need.
Yes, absolutely. And just to go back to your example of virtual care, it's you're speaking to your doctor more, so inevitably you're probably getting better care. But don't
Exactly.
forget, there's people who have mobility issues that can't always physically go to the clinic or to the doctor. There's people who live en région, how do you say, in the outskirts, who, to get proper healthcare have to really travel far. So this is again, it's huge in terms of not leaving anyone behind, to use your
Behind.
terms.
I love it. I love it because you also reminded me of my years in the mining industry. So for those of you who don't know, Canada is one of the largest mining countries in the world. The extractive industry is huge in Canada. And a lot of our mining takes place in remote communities. They're hours away from any major medical facility. They may have small medical facilities semi-locally, but if you need specialist care or any sort of specialist diagnosis, you are getting on a plane and flying somewhere to go get that care before. Now your tests can be done locally, sent to a physician, a specialist who's hundreds of kilometers away, and they can at least do a preliminary evaluation of your case and then talk about next steps. So to me, what's really exciting about it is it has allowed communities that were, frankly, we created two tiers. Urban centers had better access to healthcare, and people in remote communities were forfeit. Like they were literally, you were just not getting the same quality of support. And in those communities, it also created a have and have not. Those who had larger access to resources, financial resources, could fly somewhere for care. But those who were, lower income, we were seeing the health, the death rates and the degree of suffering from secondary effects of diabetes and other ailments just more acute in those communities. So I just love the fact that this telehealth has really brought healthcare to included, to your point, left no one behind. And so that's really an exciting sort of evolution. Well, we're getting to the end, and we have something that we do here on the Sync podcast. We ask the spotlight question to all of our guests. And so, one of the things I would love to have you share with this audience is how have your values enabled you to drive impact in your profession? Like how are they in sync so that you are really living those values through your professional work?
That's an interesting question. I think for me, I'm a hard-headed person, so my values, I stay true to them. But I think, going out on my own, leaving the corporate world behind, I guess, and starting my own firm, one of the things that I told myself is that when you're like an entrepreneur or a smaller business, and you're, I guess, at a certain level of your career, you can almost choose your own clients, right? Like if you're an employee in a big company and they tell you handle this file, well, you handle that file, right? But when you're a smaller organization, not formally, it's not that I say I choose you and I choose you, but you meet people, right? You meet
Right.
different people. And when I present my values in the way that I work, in the way that I act with clients and that I deliver, it attracts
Yes.
those same values. So indirectly, I'm picking my clients are picking me. And by working together, we're reinforcing those values. And there's a trickle effect of that, right? And
Right.
the more you grow, the more those values, expand and grow.
Right.
So I guess I would say that. I would say just stay true to your values and work with people that have similar values.
It's so important. It's one of the values of being an entrepreneur is you're able to, I love what you said about choosing your clients. And, a lot of people think that you're an entrepreneur, you'll take whatever client comes your way. But the beauty of having a strong sense of who you are as a entrepreneur or as a business owner and how you want to work with people who share those values because otherwise you could work in the corporate world, otherwise you can do, we could go back to the worlds we were in before. So that resonates so much with me because we founded Synclusiv because we wanted to make sure that we were doing things that we thought brought value to our clients, but we wanted to work with clients that shared our values. And it means that work is not as much work. It's almost,
I was going to say
it
it's more
fills you
fun.
up.
It's
Yeah,
more enjoyable, right?
it
It
is.
motivates you to go to work. I mean, you spend so
Absolutely.
much time at work every day, right? It might as well
Yeah.
be fun.
It's nice when it gives you more than just a paycheck. Well, I want to thank you, Jenna, for joining us today. I found this conversation so insightful. I don't think people think of inclusion and benefits, and I think you've allowed people to sort of see that truly making sure you're not leaving anyone behind means that it's part of the fabric of everything that we do. And the benefit space is no different. So, one last thing I did want to ask you is how can our listeners find you? I
Ooh,
mean, we
good
want them
question.
to tap into Vita Assure.
Definitely. Listen, I'm on LinkedIn. Anybody can reach out. I'll always reply. You can go to our website, vitaassure.com, and our contact info is there. There's buttons you can click to reach us. So we're really connected. I think whether that be phone, email, text, there's so many different ways to connect, and we're really quite responsive. I don't want anyone to ever shy away. If you're curious, if you want to have a chat, just click, call, social media, whatever it is.
Listen, I can attest to that. That's how I connected with you, and we've, been together ever since. I've also referred you to other clients as well because, again, we share those values. So, thanks again for joining us today. And I want to thank our listeners for tuning into the Sync podcast. All the relevant links for this episode will be in the description box. And don't forget to join our community, share this episode, subscribe, click like on YouTube, and engage with us on social media. Let's keep the conversation going. So until next time, we'll meet again. Thanks for tuning in to the Sync podcast. If you enjoyed today's conversation, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. The Sync podcast is brought to you by Synclusiv, where we're building inclusive workplaces that work for everyone. To learn more about how Synclusiv can help your organization create real, measurable change, visit synclusiv.com. Until next time, stay in sync.